in terms of the structure of our effort, firstly, the hypothesis is therefore indicative that mind has to initially focus on what we would call an African heritage program, understanding, characterizing who Africans are, who our institutions are. Having done that, then to apply this platform of Africanness, if you like, on economic development. So what is it that we can borrow or build on in terms of who we are to accelerate our efforts in economic development? What is it that we can apply in terms of our traditional institutions to inform today's way of governing our institutions and developing them? To be very concrete, let me illustrate my point here. If I take the area of finance, all our financial institutions at the moment appear to be esoteric, and the ordinary African is quite intimidated about approaching a financial institution and asking for assistance or capital or whatever. They feel like this is an institution which they don't understand. You know, the challenge for me is that when you look at Africa and look very closely, traditionally we had our own financial ways of doing things. We lent labor to each other. We lent capital to each other. We had things which are called susus in West Africa, stockfields in Southern Africa or in South Africa. And I believe, and also we had a way of consolidating our labor. Say this week you would brew beer, and we as a community will come to your fields and lend you our labor. Lending labor is actually lending money because labor is capital. What is frustrating is that in building our modern institutions, we've not borrowed from any of these. We've completely gone and taken something which is completely foreign, as if we did not have practices which would have enabled our people to much more easily and more psychologically easily identified with the modern institution. And Mind's mandate, therefore, is to go back and look for these instances where we can find traditional practices, borrow from them, modernize them, but help our current populations to really psychologically identify with as they approach our modern institutions. The other one, which I think is really quite important, is law. Africa, as you know, had its own way. Everywhere in Africa you go, there were ways of conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is a major component of the legal body, legal framework, whether we're talking constitutions or whether we're talking commerce and things like this. But when you look at how we've constructed our constitutions and our laws and our systems of courts, none of them, I stand to be corrected, but in my opinion, none of our modern institutions have attempted to borrow from what we used to do. And yet at the same time we say law is applicable to everybody. You cannot plead ignorance from law. Logically, therefore, what it means is that you need to make law accessible to the ordinary person. It does not have to depend on education. You have to find mechanisms of making legal institutions be facilitative of the interaction of ordinary human beings. And again, my contention is that if we invest enough effort, we'll find traditional practices which we can modernize in a way which makes modern constitutions and modern law-making practices accessible to the ordinary African. And I think this is pivotal.